what a treat it is to be able to sit here. Thanks so much for making time and for traveling quite a distance to be here, because I understand Formosa Surfboards and your headquarters, not in Taipei, right?
Oh, no.
Whereabouts?
We're in the south, the very southern tip of Taiwan. So I guess the closest famous town would be Kenting.
Yes.
I understand you guys were there.
Yes, we were.
Assuming?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry I missed you guys, by the way.
Yeah, no, I heard you've been traveling
Yeah.
and gallivanting Southeast Asia.
Yeah.
We'll chat about that later.
Okay, yeah. But the southern tip of Taiwan,
Mm-hmm.
similar to Hawaii. That's what drew me there. Actually, when I came to Taiwan, I've never been anywhere else in Taiwan. When I landed here, I went straight south. And so that's all I knew was the south.
Oh, wow.
And so I thought that all of Taiwan is tropical and palm trees and, nice beaches. That's what I was thinking.
That was your perception.
Yeah. Taipei, yeah, it's kind of a different world than down south,
I find it quite incredible as a visitor here, and I've only been here a few weeks, but it's quite incredible how diverse the different areas around and towns and cities and villages around Taiwan are.
Yeah.
In both their cuisine, their geography, the topography of the land, the beaches.
Yeah.
Very diverse.
Yeah. It seems like almost there's different subcultures within the culture.
Yes.
Yeah. And so every different area has their little own subculture. I think that's what makes it kind of cool, huh?
Definitely, yeah.
Super safe,
Born and raised in Hawaii, or were you born in Japan and then moved to Hawaii?
Born and raised
on
Oahu. I'm the 4th generation of Japanese Americans born in Hawaii. I asked my grandmother, where's our family, from in Japan?
Yes.
She didn't know.
Really?
Yeah. And she didn't think that there was any of our family left in Japan. Maybe they all came to Hawaii, but she didn't know.
Father's or your mother's side?
That was my mother's side.
Okay.
So by the time I got old enough I had all these questions, like my father's side, both my grandparents had passed already. But on my mother's side, my grandmother, she just passed, but she lived until she was 100. I think she was 106 or something like that.
Wow.
Yeah. So she had a lot of history,
Yes, locked in there.
Yeah. So I think I was in my 20s or whatever. I wanted to know. No, she's from Maui. So I flew to Maui and I asked her all these things, I wanted to know. And then a lot of it she didn't know because she was born in Hawaii. Her parents were from Hawaii, so.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's interesting that connection between Hawaii and Japan. When I was there, I experienced and saw quite a bit of that influence and a lot of visitors still now.
Oh, yeah.
From Japan, moving back and forth from Hawaii.
Yeah.
We were in Bali and we were looking down on this rice paddy, on these rice terraces, and the woman that was serving us this beautifully deep fried banana pancakes or whatever they were, she said, "Oh, that's my father working in the rice paddy there." And I looked at him and I said, and she must have been in her 60s or and I said, "Well, how old is your father?" She said, "No, he's 106."
Still
and he's still working there in the rice terraces. This was his land that was given to him by a chief pre the Second World War or something. Incredible.
Yeah, unreal.
Raised what's it? Raised on rice. I think maybe that's the secret, eh? Maybe rice is the secret. All right then. So growing up in Hawaii, south,
kind of
near Honolulu.
Yeah, well, there's a place called Pro City.
Yes.
Yeah, it's kind of central, so it's 30 minutes to town and then about 40 minutes to the North Shore. So yeah, for us, we didn't mind living there, growing up there, because it was so close. Wherever there were waves, we could go there. Within an hour we could be surfing.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Would you say that you had an enjoyable upbringing? Did you have a good childhood?
So
Okay.
Yeah, it was we grew up in I grew up in a middle class neighborhood, and most of the families were Japanese like me. And we all about the same age.
Gotcha.
So all of my friends, like a lot of them, my good friends now, I've known them since we were little kids because we grew up, within a couple blocks of each other, and we all started surfing at the same time. Yeah, I had my parents split when I was younger, and so my mom was left to raise 3 boys, myself and my 2 brothers. We were just driving her nuts, driving her nuts.
I can relate. I had a similar upbringing. My dad, my mom, she was disabled,
Oh,
and she had to pretty much.
yeah.
I've got 3 brothers,
Oh.
but they were all older than me, and they'd left the house. I was in South Africa. There's a saying, "Laat lammetjie," which means you're the late lamb that comes along. So there was 15 years gap between me and the youngest of those 3. So my mom had to pretty much bring me up as well. So I understand the impact and the challenges.
Actually, my mother was considered disabled because she couldn't hear, and it just made everything harder, for her and for us too. Yeah, just having that and similar. My younger brother is 8 years younger than me. So my mother made sure that she protected him, and for myself and my older brother, we're just 1 year apart, so we're constantly going at each other. And then got into trouble, trouble with the law and all kinds of stuff. But I think in the end, I'm still here. So
I'm still here.
it worked out okay.
You made it. Living a life, doing what you love.
Yeah.
Got a lovely wife yourself. So I mean, you did all right. We did all right.
Yeah, we did.
And I'm sure, as was the case for me, your mother was your rock, essentially.
Yeah.
She was the anchor point for the family.
Yeah.
It kept you guys together, basically.
She basically taught us, she made us grow up. If you want to eat, cook your own food. If you don't want to cook, you're not going to eat. You want clean clothes, you do your own laundry. It's whatever, you have to do it yourself now. You don't rely on, she was just working, try to keep the roof over our head. So it was just, so as soon as I could, I was like, yeah, I want to work, because I need to make some money, and I kind of wanted to just do my own thing, get away,
Yeah.
So as soon as I could, I think I was 15 or whatever, and the state placed me into a work program to keep me out of trouble. That's what it was. And so, but then I was like, okay, yeah, I don't mind working. I want to work, And so since then, I've never stopped. I've never had a time where I haven't done anything, So it's like, I want to work,
Yeah.
I'm capable. Give me work,
I think that the flip side to that challenging upbringing, it creates a hunger in you. And when you realize that change is possible in the power of your own hand, it kind of gives you that extra drive and fire to want to put yourself in a better place in every way, physically, psychologically, emotionally. You want to be in a better place. So, but to get there, like you say, you got to get your hands dirty. You got to work. You got to earn it.
I don't think if it wasn't for that type of upbringing, there's no pointing the finger or blaming anybody. It's just that's just how it was, and that's just how we turned out, and
Similar thing with me, just from a young age, leave home, get on your own 2 feet, because you're almost like you've got this appreciation for what your mother has done for you, but at the same time, you almost want to unburden her from that responsibility.
at the time, you don't, think about it. We were, so my dad left. I think we were like 10 years old or something. We were so used to like doing stuff on our own, and then when it came time for someone to, hey, do this, no, I had a problem with people telling me what to do, and so that was the other side of it, right? So I became so independent that I don't. So if my older brother would tell me, hey, help me do this, but no, you need to ask me nicely, then I'll help you. But so I had this attitude, I think I still do, that it's like problem with, I don't know if it's a problem with authority or whatever it is, but yeah, I don't like being, if someone wants to, to ask me, that's no problem.
Yeah.
But if you start telling me,
Yeah.
you have to do this, you have to do, I don't have to do anything that I don't want to do, and that's just so.
Yeah, I completely get it. I think we've got a lot of similarities, and I suppose you're also one of those persons who, if everyone's going in that direction, I'm going to go in this direction, simply because, and weirdly, I've felt that way about surfing a lot, where everyone's just pushing a certain style, or surfing, and I'm always like, I pull back, because everyone's kind of doing it now, or want to do it, whereas back in the day, us surfer guys, we were like the rebellious ones, or we were the ones, the alternate ones now.
Yeah.
And so you kind of like get this weird, as a person,
Yeah.
this weird,
It's weird.
Yeah.
It is weird. I feel like, what?
Anti-authoritarianism. Try and say that after a few beers. So your first few jobs as a youngster growing up, like let's chat about that, and let's also talk about how you eventually got into shaping boards. When did you first get in the water, and your love for surfing?
Oh, like my first job was cleaning the classrooms. This was in the summer. School's out, so I'd walk back to school, work under the custodian there, and he just gave me scrub the chairs or whatever, clean the classrooms, cut the grass or whatever. I decided that, I mean, it was fine. I liked doing it. And my boss, the custodian, he was pretty strict. Hey, you show up this time. In fact, you show up early. I remember asking him one day, I was like, oh, I'm kind of hungry. I can take my lunch break. He's like, hey, boy, take your lunch break when I tell you take your lunch break. I said, okay. So, but it's fine. I didn't have any, negative feelings about that. It was just, okay, that's just how it is. Okay, no problem, So I went from that to then I started surfing, and then so I got a job working in a warehouse so like afternoon, evenings, so I can surf in the mornings. And then school kind of got in the way of that. And so I was like, I don't want to go to school, because I'd rather surf when everyone else is in school. Then I can have all the waves to myself. And then, I got into some trouble because I wasn't going to school. And then, they track you, like the state tracks your school attendance.
If you truant.
Yeah. I didn't know that, and I had friends that were older than me. So they were out of high school. Oh, I would call, oh, I want to go surf. Hey, you should go to school. Man, I want to go to school. Okay, we pick you up. Okay.
So your surfing was improving.
Yeah. That's all I wanted to do, and then I knew I had to work. So I was just surf and work and just cut the school out. I felt like I didn't need school. I couldn't sit in class, for that long. It was just too much. Ended up the school, and actually at the same time, I started getting into trouble. I got arrested a couple times, and then I actually got locked up in the juvenile detention, because the family court judge decided that I was disrespectful to her. So she wanted to make an example out of me.
Okay.
So she told me, I still remember it. She's like, oh, Mr. Kajioka, it looks like you haven't been going to school, huh? And then I was like, she's like, I warn you right now, if you miss a week of school, I'm going to lock you up. It just went in one year and out the other, whatever. I was like, yeah, whatever, And then I tried to go to school. I was like, yeah. So I missed like a month of school. And then I went back to the court, and then the same judge was like, oh,
you're back.
Yeah, you didn't think I was serious, right? Okay, so this date you have to check in at this location. If you miss that, we're gonna put a bench warrant out for you. I was like, what? Okay. So yeah, I had to be locked up. Not long, it was just for the weekend.
Yeah. Just as a little less.
Yeah.
Yeah.
and a warning, like if you keep disobeying the courts, lock you up till you're 18 or whatever it is, you know. I learned real quick that I didn't like being locked up. It wasn't, you know, they put you in a like a dorm cell kind of thing. So you got like maybe 8 guys with you in the cell, but they pair you with people that are the same size as you, so you don't get beat up.
Okay, so they're very cognizant of
Yeah.
of personas, and
Yeah.
it's not like in the movies where you
No.
end up in prison with like
It felt like that though. When you first walk in, it felt like that.
conversations are like, "What are you in for?" And you're like, "Surfing." Because basically that's why you're in, because you're surfing, right?
I guess at the same time, it was at that specific weekend, there was some basketball championship thing going on. So all the guards wanted to watch this basketball tournament on TV. And so I was supposed to be in for like hard labor, go out and in the community and clean the yard or cut the grass. But then all the guards wanted to watch this game. So we just ended up sitting down and doing nothing the whole day, you know. They would give us 1 cigarette, you know, you pair up with 2 other guys and then you go in the bathroom and you just smoke that cigarette, you know. That's like the highlight of the day. But yeah, after that, I decided that I didn't want to be, you know, just because I knew everyone was surfing. My friends were surfing. I decided I didn't want to be locked up.
Did you feel like a bird that had been caged, basically? Like your freedom was just a little bit of a jolt.
Yeah, being in there, it was not a big deal, I didn't think, but just the fact that I could be surfing, you know, I could be getting these waves, you know, and then surfing was more important than being stupid and doing dumb things, you know. Yeah.
You choose how you want to spend your time doing whatever it is that you wanted to. And surfing, I mean, wanting to improve your surfing and wanting to is a worthy endeavor, one would say.
Oh, yeah.
Obviously, the school system wouldn't quite agree because they had different plans for you. But once you'd learned that lesson and once you'd realized, play to their rules.
Yeah. You know, credit to the school system, because they tried to keep me in school, you know, and they tried to, so they pulled me out of my regular classes and they put me into this other class where there's one teacher and you just learn on your own. You know, you do the work, no homework, you know, no big projects or assignments. It's just you do the work in the class and you leave and that's it. But even that was like,
Tough.
And then, you know, but that was like the last straw. If you don't make it out of this class, then they'll kick you out. They'll kick you out of school, you know.
Got it.
And so the counselor, he was like, well, you know, there's the GED exam coming up. I think you should take it, you know. And then, you know, they talked to my mom and my mom was like, yeah, whatever, you know, let's just get something, get it over it, and then get out of school, you know. She wanted me to stay in school, but there was no way, you know. So I think it was like the 3rd year of high school. I don't think I passed my 2nd year, but so 3rd year within the first 2 months of school, they're like, the test is coming, so we'll help you prepare. So they used this class that I was in to prepare me for this test, and then I took the test. I guess I did really well. I got called back into the counselor's office like a week later. She said, oh, you passed the test. Oh, I think you should really think about going to college because, you know, your scores are really good. I was like, I just got out of school. I don't want to go back into school, you know. But that was it. I was done. Out of school, out of high school, early.
Chain off your back.
Yeah.
So when did you start shaping?
I started shaping late in life, actually. Just probably 18 years ago, maybe.
Okay.
88, 89. So I got my first real, like, full-time job, which was in the surf industry. I actually wanted to be a pro. I wanted to turn pro. That's what I wanted to do, you know. And so I had talked to some guys that they were, you know, retired pros and stuff like that. They're like, no, you ain't gonna make no money. You know, you need, at the time in like this
Mid-80s.
Yeah, 80s. They tried it, you know, they were on tour and they said, yeah, even you're on tour, you don't make no money. You would have to still work, you know, so you might as well just work. And then so they said, if you work in the surf industry, at least you're around surfing. So I got a job, you know, working for Eric Arakawa. And at the time, he was partnered with this guy named David Skadelsky. So these two, they partner and they developed the nose guard. Remember the nose guard thing?
Yeah.
And so this was in that time period in the 80s. You know, David, he was like the business guy. You know, he ran pretty much the day-to-day operations of the business. Eric he still had his surfboard label, Island Classics. So he was doing that. And so David, he basically taught me about business. You know, I was just like, you know, kid, first full-time job, but I guess, I don't know, maybe he saw something in me. He said, come over here, I'll teach you how to run a business. Basically show me what he did, all these like financial things and, you know, this and that. And, you know, he also taught me how to like be a valuable employee, you know, and he taught me like the attitude, you know, to have the right attitude, you know.
So he was really quite a mentor in
Yeah.
terms of like, and that's all you kind of needed. You saw the potential in you, the fire in you, the spirit in you that he thought like he could resonate with. And then it was like, okay, let me just help round you out a little bit.
Yeah.
And provided what, you know, the school, when you left school, you were probably being told that like, if you don't go to college, if you don't get good grades, you're going to amount to nothing in life, basically. That was the same rhetoric I think we were all fed.
Oh yeah.
You know, you go and get a 9 to 5. This is how you should do things. Otherwise, you're not going to be successful in life.
Yeah.
And then he saw the potential in you, taught you the back end of the business, the stuff that's boring, like the accounts and the.
You know, I didn't really think of it until recently. You know, so like in the last maybe, I don't know, 10 years. You know, I thought back, I was like, wow, you know, he really like showed me the ropes, so to speak. You know, and then, you know, so it was a surf company. So we would go ASR, you know, those trade shows, ASR, Surf Expo, and then because it was the nose guard and they did it for surfboards and sailboards, so we'd go to Texas for windsurf, you know, trade show. So I got to travel all over, and I got to meet industry people, you know, like the Danny Quacks, Gordon Merchants, Bob Hurley's. I met all these people, you know, just through working for David and Eric, you know.
Networking.
Yeah. And so that was one part of it. And then Eric with the surfboard side of it. So part of my responsibilities was to go to, you know, the factory and just to make sure the boards are, you know, moving through the factory on time. So I got to learn, you know, back then I thought, oh yeah, surfboards, you just get the foam, shake the foam, glass them, write it. That's my concept of how boards are built. But when I was working for Eric, you know, he showed me what good quality, how they're made, you know, and the people that are making them. These guys working in the factories, you know, you could tell that they all enjoyed what they did because they surf, you know, they all surfed and they were on the North Shore, you know, and yeah, they had to work. They can't surf all the time, but then what better way to make money than build surfboards, you know? Yeah, I got to see what it takes to the whole process, you know.
It's incredible that they built their entire business model around high performance boards with rockers. That's what that nose guard was all about.
Yeah.
It was all about that pointy nose.
Yeah.
With it in those times, like the rockers were getting sort of heavier and heavier. And we all grew up in the late 80s, early 90s, learning to surf on high performance thrusters. It's crazy. And that whole business model was based around that nose guard.
Yeah.
It's time, eh? It's just timing.
Yeah. And you know, so I think people like Barton Lynch, he was the Australian distributor. And so he was happened to be one of my surf heroes, you know. So he would come in all the time and say, it's Barton Lynch, you know. I got autographs or whatever, you know, and as you know, I was 20, 21, you know, and here's a guy that you only see him in magazines or you see him on a video. You know, this is pre-internet, you know. And so it's like, oh, all these my heroes are coming, you know, and I get to meet all of them. So good. So going,
Yeah.
to the factory. So, I would have to pick up foam for Eric from Clark Foam. There used to be Clark Foam in Hawaii, in Wahiawa. Get the foam, take them up to Haleiwa where Eric was shaping. And then, whatever finished boards, just check them and then bring them back. And then this story, I tell you, this one day I was there at the factory and then Eric was like, hey, there's some used boards on this rack, just bring them back to the office, clean them up, and we'll sell it. And I said, oh yeah, no problem. I went to the rack and it was all the team boards, Michael Ho, Derek Ho, Ronnie Burns. And at that time, so Michael was, his competitive career was kind of slowing down. But Derek he was actually going for a world title. I think he was top 5 in the world at the time. And then I go to this rack and I'm like, this is Derek's board, And then I pick it up and I couldn't believe how light the board was, just ultra light. And, everything just, we find there's no like extra foam, to slow you down or to hinder you. It's just everything's taken out. It's just performance, like just higher performance
than you'd ever felt on a board.
Yeah.
Like that moment was like, this feels incredible.
Yeah. And I remember I stood there, bore the board under my arm and I was like, wow, oh, yeah. And at the time I had a board sponsor,
Okay.
And so the boards that I was ordering, they were wider and they were thicker because I thought that was just what I rode, until I saw these. And then Derek, and Michael, they're about my size, so I could ride their boards doing this. And then Eric comes around the corner and he's like, what are you doing? And I'm just like, oh, I'm just looking at these boards. I was like, wow, I can't believe it. I've never seen boards shaped like that before. He's like, you like? I was like, yeah, I like it. Yeah, you try them out. All these boards, you try them all.
Very cool.
And I was like, oh, okay. And then that moment changed my life, my surfing life, because I rode those boards. It took me, a little while to get used to them. But then after that, I was like, I cannot ride anything. My boards have to be like this. And they have to be this weight and these dimensions.
They have the crazy channels through the back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
6-channel, 4-channel, and 6-channel. And then at the time, the rockers weren't as much yet.
Yeah.
But then
they were moving
the year or two later, then when the Kelly Slater fully came on scene, then everything kind of changed. But I still, all those guys changed their boards too. Like Derek's boards changed, but they still, I still rode them. I still rode those dimensions, but everything got stretched out a little longer. The rockers got increased a lot, Yeah.
Remember those crazy rockers?
If you were starting to surf that time, it was hard.
It was hard.
Yeah.
That's when I was kind of starting to surf, around about 1989, 90, 91. That's kind of when those rockers were just going through the roof.
And it's funny. So that during that time, it was because of Kelly Slater, the fishes started coming back. And at around the same time is when Tom Curran, there was that video of him surfing on a fish.
On the Search with Frankie Oberhauser.
Yeah.
Like it was somewhere in Indo, like really big, and he was on that really small fish.
Yeah. There was that, and then there was a footage of him surfing a beach break on like a super wide, just, old school, like a real fish, old school fish.
Yeah. Wasn't that in Hospital or Period?
Yeah, I think so, yeah. And so I thinking in my mind, it's probably around the same time. And then so people are seeing, well, I can't ride Kelly Slater's boards, but look at Tom Curran. He's riding this thing that, looks so wide and, because back then too, right, fishes were like, you couldn't even find them.
They'd almost gone to the point of extinction, one could say.
Yeah. And then I think because of everything went so extreme in one direction, that it kind of brought these boards back. Yeah. Anyway, so when I started surfing, 81, probably 81, 82, around there, the thruster was still kind of new. Twin fin, the MR style twin fins, they were still still on the rack, you know, so they were still popular. And then there were single fins still, and the thruster was the new thing. And so I saw all these boards, I rode the MR twins, when I was starting to surf. I rode a single fin 6.8. That was like the first board, that I kind of learned on, I caught waves on. And then the first board I bought was a thruster, was short, kind of wide, that typical, that 80s, really thick. And it had two glass-on side fins with a center box. So you buy a small, that small box fin for it. And it's kind of funny that I see all these boards coming back,
No, it's quite incredible how, and I think you're right. I think it's quite interesting when you unpack it like that. But I think you're right. Tommy Curran was almost like the instigator of reintroducing that little boxy fish, right?
Yeah, I'm trying to remember is it the same time? But I think it was,
It was like
right around, maybe not
early 90s, wasn't it?
Yeah. So, and I'm thinking that it's probably maybe because, everyone's, maybe even Tom felt like, wow, this board's just, there's just getting too much rocker in it, and, too narrow and too thin. I'll just ride the total opposite,
Well, Jim Banks swears by 20s. I said it to you earlier, and he reckons it's like the best board for like Uluwatu and like big heavy sections, and obviously with the reverse V now.
Was he the one that got that barrel just recently?
Yeah, at the Padang contest. Yeah. He got clipped on the first one, kind of made it, and then like on the second one, he got an absolute screw. Yeah, he's riding. I mean, and he's like a massive promoter of twin, but he reckons way more sort of like acceleration than one would even have with a high performance thruster on a wave like, Padang or Ulu. At what point did you go, right, I want to be a shaper now?
I kind of had an interest in it.
Yeah.
From when I started working for Eric, I would ask him, hey, Eric, I want to teach me how to shape. He said, yeah, come. Then I would go watch him shape, and I'll be like, okay, nah, I'll let you shape it, and I'll just order boards.
It's like hard work.
Yeah, and then he'll be like, oh, you see this line over there? I'll be like, yeah, but actually, no, I didn't know what he was talking about, And then just one day, I decided that, okay, I'm ready, I want to learn. And at the same time, it's like, I have all these ideas I want to put into a board, but it's like, okay, now I got to talk to my shaper and order the board. And then, it's just, the process is just, I mean, it's not bad, but it's just, I can speed it up if I just learn how to shape. Then I can just, the ideas I have, I do it myself. And so I called up my, my shaper. His name's Setsu. Shout out
to Setsu.
He was, super nice guy, underground shaper in Hawaii. He's from Japan, but he lives in Hawaii. Super talented. I was like, Setsu, I want to learn how to shape. Come. Okay. Yeah. Whenever, just come. So he basically just taught me just the steps. Do this first, and then do this, and do this, and this is why you do that, and this is why you do this. But he basically just let me shape the board myself. And then after that, I think I just went a few times, and then he just showed me, and he said, just learn on your own, the best way, just figure it out, and then you have a better understanding of what you're doing. I just show you the steps, but you figure it out.
Yeah, you'll shape a few dogs in the beginning, but that's the process.
And he said, but have your own style, don't copy. And so there was basically a lot of ideas that I had. I wanted to put into a board, but I didn't want to wait. And that was the fastest way. So
yeah, just making this up.
Yeah. And then, come to find out that, so this was a few years before I moved to Taiwan. And so I had rented a shaping room next to the legendary Ben Ipa.
Oh, wow.
So I was right next door.
Good energy then coming through.
I was afraid of Ben, actually.
Okay. As one would be. Kind of like a lot of respect.
Yeah.
And a North Shore legend.
Yeah. yeah, I would see him, we just cross, hey, how's it been,
Yeah.
but super nice, super cool,
Yeah.
if I didn't want to bother him, but if I see him in the hallway or hey Ben, what you think? I want to shape this board. Then he'll kind of just yeah, give me his 2 cents and then just back to his room,
Yeah.
Yeah, but for someone that of like a legendary, and I'm like nobody, I've like barely shaped 1 or 2 boards,
Mhm.
and I just want to ask him something, and then he always took the time, Yeah, so I rented that room, and then I made a couple boards for myself, I think, and then a friend of mine said, "Hey, Brian, make me one board. So sure you like me to make you one board?" I said, "Yeah, that's okay." So I made a friend of mine, and then I think I made a couple boards for friends, and
Must have
then
worked because then
yeah,
they started talking.
yeah, I don't know if they're just being nice. They say, "Oh yeah, the board works so good," but I saw the board kind of recently that I shaped, and I was like, "Oh, this thing is just so off," But at the time, I was like, "Oh yeah, this thing is."
Being exposed. So were you already calling yourself Formosa?
No, no. So back then it was so my nickname is Ref.
Ref.
Yeah,
REF.
REF, REF. Yeah,
REF.
yeah.
Okay.
Short for refugee.
Got it.
And there's a whole another story about why they call me that.
Okay.
But anyway, so shortly after that, I moved to Taiwan, and I was like, yeah, I wanna build boards, shape boards in Taiwan, but that's not really my focus. I had partnered with somebody, and try to start a business in the south there, and then eventually, yeah, that was kind of not going how I wanted it,
Mm-hmm.
and then I found a shaping room. One of my friends had this random shaping room inside a building right at Jaluse, overlooking the beach, and she was like, "Oh, Agnes, shout out to Agnes."
Lots of shout outs happening. As one should say thank you to people that have kind of steered
Yeah, because
your journey in some direction.
if she didn't have that room, then I would end up having to build a room. Then I would end up having to look for a place to rent. But she was like, "Come, I have a shaping room inside my house." There was a couple Aussies that was there, I guess, a few years back, and they built it. So I used her room for a couple of years, I think.
Amazing.
Yeah, and then uh, so I had my original name, my label. That's what I was using, and but the problem was getting materials.
Into Taiwan.
Yeah, so foam was one thing.
Okay, so what year was this that you decided to move here?
So this was 2012. I
2012.
believe it was 2012.
Okay.
But I had come here prior to surf.
Yes.
I had heard that there were waves, and I got pictures. A friend of mine, incredible source, sent me pictures of their trip, and she was like, "Oh, dude, go." So I took 3 trips here to surf, and we got waves pretty much all those trips. And then I said, "Okay, I'm ready."
Ready to leave Oahu.
Wow, yeah.
Yeah.
I just saw the potential here, not for surfboards at the time, but just for surfing. You know,
Uncrowded waves
yeah,
for a start.
that was like the main reason.
That's
I
the number one, right?
yeah, I could, the times that we had come to surf, we score, typhoon, and they'd be like, we had a surf guide, and we're like, "What's that wave right there?" And our guide was like, "Yeah, we saw it break, and we're anybody surfing?" "I don't know." "Well, I'm not surfing right now," So, it was just like that. You just pull up and all these waves, and there's nobody around, and
One of the big draw cards for you.
that was the main reason that I said, okay, if I was to move somewhere, I could move here and live here. So 2012, packed up my stuff and said bye to Hawaii, and I came here and then started shaping on the side. And then one of my Taiwanese friends, he was like, hey, shape me a board. I was like, okay. And then I just started from there. And then another guy, hey, shape me a board. I said, okay. And then, yeah, it just was like, and then what happened at the same time was, okay, I can shape the boards, but now I got to glass these boards, and I need someone to glass it for me. Or, I got to find a place where I can glass it. But where am I going to get the resin? Where am I going to get the cloth? And then what happened was there was this guy from Taipei, his name is Lawrence. He was living in Australia and he was working for a surfboard factory in Australia. He just moved back to Taiwan and he moved down to the south. And so our mutual friend linked us up and I was like, hey, Lawrence, you want to glass boards? He's like, yeah. Okay, I'm going to shape them and you will glass it, right? He's like, yeah. Boom, in business.
Wow.
And
just like that.
Yeah, and he already had a place that he was renting, that he was glassing. And so I rented his back room. So I moved my shaping into, so we had like I believe it's the first fully functioning factory in the South, shaping and glassing all in one house,
So you were kind of like the first, really, to have that sort of setup.
Yeah, but there were guys shaping before
Yes.
before me, but they weren't, I don't think they were like shaped glass,
Yeah.
and here, or not here, but in the South.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah. So I think I was the first one that had it set up and fully functional and working,
Yeah, cool.
So shaped glass, repairs, whatever, all.
So it just started snowballing. More and more people wanted boards.
Yeah.
We're seeing a rise in surfing popularity in Taiwan over these years now.
Yeah.
Between 2012 and like 10 years later,
Oh yeah,
there's been a huge sort of upward curve, right? And people getting involved and like understanding surfing and the etiquette and everything that goes with it.
Yeah.
Some people I've met started surfing before they knew how to swim on this trip. They would literally go for surf lessons. And then they were like, I didn't know how to swim. I got swimming lessons a year later.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, it's crazy to think, it's been over 10 years, but it was a struggle because, like I said, and so a few years after, my glasser said, I'm done. I don't want glass no more. And said, like, oh,
Sick of breathing fumes.
Yeah. So I was like, okay. He kicked me out of his room too, because he was not kicked me out, but he asked me to leave.
Yes.
Because he wanted to use it for he was starting another business, so he wanted that room. So I had to find a whole new
Setup,
starting all over again, and then just so happened that we found a place which I'm in now, which is I really like because it's up away from people, so I can make as much noise as I want. And I have a small warehouse that's perfect size, not too big, not too small.
Yeah.
So just for my operation, it's the perfect size.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
So you're in a happy space right now.
Yeah.
Like in more ways than one.
Yeah.
Enjoying Taiwan. What would you say to people like that don't know about Taiwan, especially in the surf community? Why would you encourage people to come visit?
Don't.
But when we went to pick up our visas in South Africa for Taiwan, we met the most friendly consulate officials I've ever probably encountered in my life. And they were so inquisitive as to why we were going to Taiwan as a family. And they were like, please promote Taiwan, and we certainly will.
Yeah,
he doesn't want to promote it because obviously he doesn't want you to come and sort of be an extra person in the lineup.
No, it's for a surfer, it's got kind of everything. And growing up in Hawaii, you got reef breaks. Basically, 99% of the breaks are reef.
And you got Ever Beach.
Ever Beach,
which is mushy.
That's where I started surfing.
Okay, yeah.
You got the beach breaks, and then you got all these river mouths, and then you got the point breaks, the reefs. There's handful of world-class wave. It's just a variety. That's what it is. Variety, and it's pretty consistent, So I think surf destination-wise, yeah, is compared to where I just came from, on my last trip. Yeah, wave-wise, is the quality of the wave is way better than where I just came from. And you got north, south, east, west, and they got waves on all sides.
Yeah,
So,
and the diversity is incredible.
yeah. So yeah, I think it's because it's the what do you call transportation to get, especially if you're a surfer, to get to where you want to go. Public transportation for surfers is not really there yet. So I think if they make it easier for surfers to get around,
It'll explode even more.
yeah, like they do with the bicyclists.
Yes.
They try to promote cycling and make it easy for them. They should do the same for surfers, because I think a lot of people would come, especially now with the WSL. I've had it for I don't know how long already, but you see more international people coming. But then to get to Taidong, it's not the easiest,
I think a lot of the exposure that, especially our 10-year trip friendship tour that we've just had, we're trying to encourage and raise awareness around just how much surfing has grown amidst so many different things like cultural understandings and beliefs about the ocean. And you've got that tied into a lot of like the oldest generation things, challenges that surfers have getting to breaks, like not being able to put their surfboards on train. But by raising the awareness as a surf community, in the hope that it does become more accessible, more available. And unfortunately for you, slightly more crowded in your lineup. Sorry, Keith.
Potential customers, I get, yeah. But it's I think it'll happen when there's so many people surfing.
Yes.
There's going to be a outcry, like we need to get to the beach.
Yes.
I think like in Japan, they allow you to take surfboards on the train.
On the bullet trains as well.
I believe so, yeah.
Wow.
If you're living in the city and you want to surf, you got to go surf they allow you to bring your board onto the train, like that.
Yeah. It'll change in time, I think. It's as I said, we're seeing this huge exponential growth, because I think really the coastline around Taiwan is a major draw card. I mean, you're literally surrounded by ocean.
Yeah.
Like that's a draw card for tourism, for bringing people into Taiwan to appreciate the people, the culture, the cuisine. And hopefully, if you need another board for your quiver, because it's not easy traveling so far and getting here.
Yeah, you can order
it up Formosa.
Order it, pick it up.
Yeah.
Taiwan.
There we go.
Yeah.
We're going to leave all the links down below for Keith and Formosa Surfboards. Give him some love, give him a follow on the gram. So present day, Keith, what is your current focus?
My focus is on high performance shortboards.
Yep.
But I'm trying to, so I have this phrase that I kind of came up with, which is, I'm not trying to reinvent the past, but I'm trying to look toward the future for surfboards.
Okay.
And so, yeah, all these 70s inspired boards, rather cool. I build them, people order them, I build them, and I just put a modern bottom on them, but I think the future of surfboards, in my opinion, is going to be, you're taking the standard shortboard, you make it easier to ride, and you're using different materials. So I've been focused on flex, how the boards flex, because I have a snowboard background also.
Okay.
I worked in the snowboard industry for a while. I was kind of incorporating that into the boards that I build, because boards flex, and if you can control how and where they flex on the board and on a wave, I think that makes a big difference. And so when people feel, the boards feel different and they can't put a finger on why.
That's your secret sauce?
Yeah.
You're going to tell us what it is?
No.
No.
But it's, so I've been using different materials, like carbon's kind of too stiff, but so I've been working with other forms of carbon, and like, different fabric basalt and all this kind of stuff. See, I think I was the first to bring basalt to bring and use it on surfboards in Taiwan. I saw basalt, years and years ago, and then they turned it into like fabric. Before it was for cars and stuff like that, and then I saw fabric, and I reached out, and it's like, dude, I want to put this on a surfboard because, a different flex in it, and it has its
strength capabilities.
stronger than fiberglass, but not super stiff like carbon would be. So that kind of stuff. But so yeah, that's my focus, is making the performance board easier to ride for everybody, and also changing certain things to the flex. Basically, it's just the flex of it.
But does that mean you're building stronger boards as well?
Yeah, I can make them stronger,
but that means less shaping for you if someone keeps their board for longer, right?
Yeah, unfortunately.
Catch-22. Vast, nature always wins. We've got to focus on sustainability, and we haven't even spoken about like whether or not like the resins that you're using, are you using green resins? Are they accessible here in Taiwan?
Green resins, I haven't seen them. I'm sure there's probably a company that has them here, but it has to be surfboard grade. And that was one of the main challenges, is to get resin. There's a lot of resin around,
I know.
but surfboard grade resin, it's different.
Totally different, yeah.
Yeah, so, and some of the companies that I did contact, it's like, what are you going to use it for? Surfboards. What is that?
They don't even know.
So it's still too new. So, but I've been working with a resin company recently, and they seem to be open to like get more into the surf realm of, I guess, resins. What they're just like big manufacturers, and then, but so for them, surfing is just so small,
because it's such a, I mean, knowing the costs of resin and that, it's quite a big component in terms of the cost of a surfboard is your resins and your cloth.
Yeah, cloth is another one, because it has to be. I mean, it doesn't have to, but
preferably,
yeah,
surfboard grade.
Yeah. So because you want it to be clear, you don't want to laminate, and then it's not crystal clear. So all this kind of stuff was it was, so over the years, it's just like a struggle to find the suppliers, and then once you find suppliers, to hold on to suppliers, because a lot of them, they go out of business, or they move out of country, or whatever it is.
Well, that's cool. Focus is on not reinventing the wheel, but looking to the future and working on performance and how the board responds to the materials that you use on the board. It's interesting because two of the guys snapped their boards during this trip, and almost in the same place. You talk about flex and where pressure points happening on a board. It's quite interesting, and I'm sure we could sit here for a few more hours talking about that and going down that road.
So when I first came to Taiwan, so I brought a bunch of boards with me that I made for Hawaii, and they didn't work here. Oh, they worked, but it was just like, it's so hard to get them to work. So I ended up changing some stuff around, and then, but what ended up happening was, so if you take a performance board, you see on the rack, and you put my performance board next to it, the boards that I build, it'll be way easier to ride. And so that's, the point that I was trying to make, is easier to ride, not because of what it's built out of. It's because, just the shape and the design of the board is different. It's built to surf the waves here. I want to surf the waves good here. So I have to build boards that'll work
for the
waves here, and so and it all came about because of a mistake. A guy ordered a board 6'2". I made him a 6'0". And it's like, oh, okay, well, I make him another one. So I had the 6'0", but a 6'0" is kind of too long for me. So I just cut the nose off and reshaped it. And so what that did was it lowered the rocker. It's almost flat, like a fish rocker.
But you still had the volume and the yeah.
It's like a short board with a fish rocker, basically what it was.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, I'll just see. It went so good. And I thought, oh, hang on, there's something here, you know? So I played around. It was kind of flat. So I just slowly adding rocker, built another one. Oh yeah, okay, it's coming around.
Yeah.
You know, maybe flatten the tail a little bit and see how that works. And then so by playing with the rockers and, you know, bottom, the concaves or whatever, kind of developed this style of boards that's just for Taiwan. You know, it just works.
That's why you want to get a board from this man if you come and surf in Taiwan, because he's got the secret sauce.
And then, so I took these boards. They work good in Taiwan. I took some home with me. And they work totally fine in Hawaii. So, my theory is the boards that work, that are built for Hawaii, they don't work here. But if you get a board that's built for Taiwan, they work in Hawaii, and they work in Indo.
Made in Taiwan.
Yeah, they work wherever. I have friends that travel around the world. You know, I make them boards, and they always send reports. Oh,
Okay.
whatever mental wise, you know, they took a bunch of my boards. Oh, it works.
Yeah.
You know, and you know, without changing the rocker, so it's the same rocker
that you've used and developed here in Taiwan.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Yeah, I suppose it's also like, as you say, you get such a varied and diverse type of wave here.
Yeah.
You know, from beach breaks to point break to slabs, that you're able to kind of hone a board that is kind of, it'll work in most conditions, right?
Yeah. And then, you know, if the waves are perfect every day, then it doesn't, any board will work, you know. But it's when the waves are bad every day and you get a board to work, that's a special board.
Yeah.
Most of the time, you know, the waves I surf on a daily basis, this waist high, maybe chest high, onshore, you know. But if that's what you got, that's what you got, you know.
You work with.
You just, if the boards work, then you just have fun, you know. It doesn't matter what the waves are like, you still have fun.
That's the main thing.
Yeah.
It's been an absolute pleasure to get to know you in a short space of time.
Yeah.
Again, from Vast and the team, thank you for taking the time up to travel all the way up to Taipei. And next time I'm in the area, I'll come and surf one of your boards. Hopefully get to spend a little bit more time with you.
Yeah.
Yes, thanks very much. And all the best with Formosa. All the links down below. Give them some love, give them some support. And yeah, aloha and safe trip back down south.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Keith. Appreciate it.
Thank you.